"Yes, don't come for Christmas," my mom said, her voice cold as December frost. Those words hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd been expecting them. We were sitting around the Thanksgiving table, what would turn out to be my last family dinner for a while, and the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. "We'll pretend we don't know you," my brother David actually laughed, as he said it. The sound was cruel, like broken glass scraping against my heart. Maybe that'll teach you what family loyalty really means. I'm Rebecca Martinez, and at 30 years old, I thought I understood my family. I thought I understood loyalty, sacrifice, and love. I was wrong about all of it. See, I just committed the ultimate family sin. I'd said no. For the third time in 18 months, my brother had asked me for money. $15,000 to be exact. And for the first time in my adult life, I'd refused. "Rebecca's being selfish again," Mom had announced to the entire dinner table, her voice carrying that particular brand of disappointment she'd perfected over the years. Her own brother needs help, and she's too greedy to share. But here's what they didn't know, what they'd never bothered to ask. I'd already given David $47,000 over the past 5 years. $47,000. I had the bank statements to prove it, though they'd never seen those numbers. Every emergency, every just this once, every "I promise I'll pay you back," I'd said yes. Until that Tuesday in November, when I finally found my backbone. The thing about being the family's go-to ATM is that nobody keeps track of your deposits. They just expect the money to keep flowing, like some magical fountain that never runs dry. When you finally turn off the tap, suddenly you're the villain in their story. "Fine," I'd said that Thanksgiving evening, standing up from the table with as much dignity as I could muster. "If that's how you feel, then I won't come to Christmas." "Good," David had shot back. "We don't want you there anyway." Mom had nodded in agreement, her lips pressed into that thin line of judgment I knew so well. "Maybe some time alone will help you remember what really matters." What really mattered, right. What really mattered was apparently my ability to fund my brother's lifestyle while being treated like an inconvenience at best, a cash dispenser at worst. For 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, my phone stayed silent. No calls, no texts, no casual check-ins that normal families might share. It was like I'd been erased from their lives with surgical precision. At first, the silence hurt. I'd catch myself reaching for my phone to text Mom about something funny I'd seen, or to ask David how his job interview went, before remembering, oh right, I don't exist anymore. But as the days passed, something interesting happened. The silence became peaceful. For the first time in years, I wasn't dreading the next financial emergency. I wasn't walking on eggshells, afraid that saying the wrong thing might trigger another guilt trip about family obligations. I could actually breathe. I threw myself into work, which had always been my refuge anyway. My marketing agency had been growing steadily, and without the constant drama of family crises, I found I could focus like never before. We landed 3 new clients in December alone. The office Christmas party was a huge success. My employees seemed happier, probably because I wasn't constantly stressed and distracted. Still, as Christmas Eve approached, I felt the familiar pang of loneliness. I'd made my choice, and I believed it was the right one, but that didn't make it easy. I spent Christmas Eve at home with a good book and a bottle of wine, telling myself this was better than sitting at a dinner table where I was only valued for my wallet. I had no idea that at that exact moment, my entire world was about to change. It started with a photograph. Marcus Williams, David's college buddy and frequent drinking companion, was scrolling through his phone during the Martinez family Christmas Eve dinner. He'd been invited, probably to fill the empty chair where I would have sat. The irony wasn't lost on me when I learned about it later. Marcus was idly flipping through his social media when something caught his eye. A business magazine article shared by one of his LinkedIn connections. The headline read, 30 Under 30, Young Entrepreneurs Changing the Game. And there, smiling confidently from the screen, was a face he recognized. "Holy shit," Marcus had said, his voice cutting through the dinner conversation. "David, isn't this your sister?" The entire table went quiet. David looked over, expecting to see some embarrassing photo from college, or maybe a random Facebook post. What he saw instead made his fork clatter to his plate. There I was, professional headshot gleaming, with a caption that read, Rebecca Martinez, the founder and CEO of Martinez Media Solutions. Her innovative approach to digital marketing has helped her company achieve $2.1 million in revenue this year alone. "That can't be right," Mom had said, leaning over to look at the phone. "Rebecca she's not." But Marcus was already Googling my name, and the search results were painting a picture my family had never bothered to look at. Forbes article, TED Talk with 500,000 views. LinkedIn profile showing CEO of a company with 50 employees. Recent interview in Entrepreneur magazine titled Breaking Free from Financial Family Patterns. "Dude," Marcus said, his voice filled with something between awe and confusion. "Your sister is literally famous, like business famous. She gave a whole TED Talk about setting boundaries with family financial abuse." The blood drained from David's face. "Financial abuse? She said that?" "It's right here in black and white, man," says she had to learn to say no to family members who saw her as a personal bank account rather than a person. Jesus, David, how much money did you ask her for? The Christmas Eve dinner had apparently devolved into chaos after that. David, faced with the reality of what he'd been doing, had started making excuses. Mom had gone into defensive mode, insisting that family should help each other. But the damage was done. Marcus, who'd always thought I was just David's uptight sister with a boring office job, now saw me for who I really was. And more importantly, he saw my family for who they really were. While I was at home, completely unaware of this drama unfolding, David was having what I can only describe as a panic attack. He'd spent years telling his friends that his sister was cheap, selfish, that she had money, but refused to share it with family. Now he was staring at evidence that I wasn't just comfortable financially, I was successful, accomplished, and apparently well known in my field. The Google search had revealed everything. My company's website showcased impressive client testimonials and case studies. My TED Talk, titled The Hidden Cost of Family Financial Dysfunction, had comments from viewers thanking me for putting words to their own experiences. My LinkedIn showed endorsements from industry leaders, speaking engagements, and awards I'd never mentioned to my family. "She never told us," Mom kept saying, as if that somehow made everything okay. "She never said she was doing so well." But that's the thing about being humble. It's often mistaken for being unsuccessful. I'd never bragged about my achievements because I'd been raised to believe that was tacky. I'd never flaunted my income because I thought family should love you regardless of your bank account. I'd been quietly building an empire while they assumed I was just getting by. The truth was hitting them like a freight train. Every time they'd rolled their eyes at my little business, I'd been building something significant. Every time they'd called me selfish for not giving David money, I'd been establishing healthy boundaries that successful people understand. Every time they'd made me feel guilty for prioritizing my career, I'd been creating the very success they now couldn't ignore. By midnight on Christmas Eve, David was full-blown spiraling. He'd called 3 friends to ask if they'd heard of Martinez Media Solutions. He'd read every article about me he could find. He'd watched my entire TED Talk twice, cringing as I spoke about family members who mistake your success for their safety net. "We fucked up," he finally admitted to Mom around 1 in the morning. "We really fucked up." The call started at 6 a.m. on Christmas morning. My phone, which had been blissfully quiet for 3 weeks, suddenly wouldn't stop buzzing. David's name appeared on my screen 25 times in the first hour alone. Then Mom started calling, then texting, then calling again. "Rebecca, please call me back." "Honey, we need to talk." "I'm sorry, please pick up." "Rebecca, this is important." I let them all go to voicemail. I read every text but didn't respond. For 3 weeks, I'd been radio silent to them. Now I was returning the favor, and honestly, it felt pretty good. The desperation in their messages was palpable. David's texts grew increasingly frantic. "Please talk to me." "I saw the Forbes thing. I didn't know you were so successful." Mom's crying. "We're all here waiting for you to come to dinner. Please don't let this ruin Christmas." That last one almost made me laugh. Don't let this ruin Christmas. They'd already ruined Christmas when they banned me from it. I wasn't the one changing the rules mid-game. But the message that really caught my attention came at 2 p.m. "I watched your TED Talk. I understand now. Please give us a chance to make this right." I stared at that text for a long time. David had watched my TED Talk, the one where I'd carefully, professionally explained the psychological patterns of family financial abuse, the one where I'd talked about the guilt, the manipulation, the way loving families can become toxic systems without anyone meaning for it to happen. He'd heard me tell 1,200 people, and now 500,000 online viewers, about the family member who'd asked me for money so many times I'd lost count, about the mother who'd called me selfish for setting boundaries, about the choice between enabling dysfunction and choosing self-respect. The irony was beautiful, really. They'd banned me from Christmas for refusing to be their ATM, and in doing so, they'd created the very situation that exposed just how wrong they'd been about everything. My phone rang again. Mom this time. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Rebecca?" Her voice was small, uncertain. "Honey, will you please come to dinner?" The woman who'd told me not to come for Christmas was now begging me to show up. The mother who'd said I wasn't family anymore was now trying to sound loving and contrite. "I thought I wasn't welcome," I said calmly. "We were wrong. We were so wrong. Please, everyone's here. Everyone wants to see you." Everyone. Right. The same everyone who'd agreed I should be banned 3 weeks ago. "I'll think about it," I said, and hung up. But I'd already made my decision. I was going to Christmas dinner after all. just not as the desperate, grateful family member they expected. I was going as Rebecca Martinez, successful entrepreneur, TED Talk speaker, and woman who'd finally learned her worth. They wanted me at their Christmas table? Fine. But this time we were playing by my rules. I spent the next 3 hours carefully planning my approach. This wasn't going to be some emotional, reactive confrontation. I'd built a multi-million-dollar business by thinking strategically, and this situation required the same level of tactical precision. First, I pulled up my laptop and created a folder labeled Family Financial History. Inside, I compiled 5 years' worth of bank transfers, text message screenshots, and email chains. Every emergency David had manufactured. Every guilt trip Mom had deployed. Every time I'd been called selfish for having boundaries. The evidence was overwhelming, and more importantly, it was undeniable. The pattern was clear as daylight when you laid it all out. David would create a crisis: medical bills, car repairs, rent money, job interview suit, security deposit, you name it. Mom would call me within hours, explaining how family helps family and how disappointed she was in my selfishness if I hesitated even slightly. I'd cave, transfer the money, and then watch David post photos from expensive restaurants or new gaming equipment on social media within days. $47,312 over 5 years. I had receipts for every penny. Next, I screenshots of their recent behavior: the Thanksgiving dinner demands, the Christmas ban, David's cruel laughter, Mom's cold dismissal, their 3 weeks of complete silence, treating me like I'd died. All of it documented, all of it saved. But the real power move came when I printed out my recent achievements. The Forbes article that had started this whole revelation, my TED Talk transcript, client testimonials, revenue reports, awards, and recognition I'd never bothered to mention because I'd been raised to believe that bragging was tacky. They thought they were dealing with the same pushover who'd funded David's lifestyle for years. They had no idea who they were really messing with. At 4 p.m., I sent a single text to the family group chat they'd apparently forgotten to remove me from. "I'll be there at 6. We need to talk." The response was immediate: relief, gratitude, promises that everything would be different. I didn't reply to any of it. Instead, I took a long shower, styled my hair, and put on the outfit I'd worn to my Forbes photo shoot: a sharp black blazer, designer jeans, and heels that meant business. I grabbed my Tesla keys, loaded my evidence folder into a leather portfolio, and drove toward the house I'd grown up in, feeling more confident than I had in years. The Martinez family home looked the same as always: modest ranch style, Christmas lights hung slightly crooked, David's beat-up Honda taking up half the driveway. But as I pulled up in my Model S, I could see faces pressed against the living room window. They were watching, waiting, probably rehearsing their apologies. I sat in the car for a moment, engine off, letting them wait. This was my show now, and it would start when I decided it was time. When I finally walked through the front door, the silence was deafening. Mom rushed toward me, arms outstretched for a hug I wasn't ready to give. David hung back near the kitchen, looking like he'd aged 5 years in 3 weeks. Uncle Robert and Aunt Maria were there too, along with my cousins Jenny and Carlos. The whole extended family, witnesses to whatever was about to unfold. "Rebecca, honey," Mom started, her voice shaking slightly. "I'm so glad you came. We have so much to—" "We do need to talk," I interrupted, setting my portfolio on the coffee table with a deliberate thud. But first, let's address the elephant in the room. I pulled out the printed Forbes article and set it on the table where everyone could see it. The professional headshot of me, smiling confidently, stared back at them. "This is what you banned from Christmas," I said calmly. "Your daughter, your sister, who built a company from nothing, while you all assumed I was just scraping by." David shifted uncomfortably. "Rebecca, we didn't know." "You didn't know because you never asked," I cut him off. "In 5 years, not one of you has ever asked how my business was doing. Not once. You just assumed I had money when you needed it and ignored me when you didn't." Uncle Robert cleared his throat. "Rebecca, we're all very proud." "Are you?" I opened my portfolio and pulled out the bank statements. Because these numbers tell a different story. I spread the papers across Mom's coffee table like I was presenting evidence in court, which in a way I was. $47,312, I announced. "That's how much I've given this family over the past 5 years. David, would you like to guess how much you've paid back?" The room was so quiet you could hear the Christmas tree lights humming. "I'm waiting," I said. I don't." David stammered. "0, I said. $0.00. Not because you couldn't afford to pay me back. I have screenshots of you posting from Vegas trips and buying PlayStation games, but because you never intended to. I wasn't your sister who was helping you out. I was your personal ATM. Mom tried to intervene. "Honey, family doesn't keep track of." "Family absolutely keeps track," I snapped, my composure cracking slightly. Healthy families keep track. They show gratitude. They don't exploit each other's kindness until there's nothing left. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to David's contact. "Should I read some of the messages you sent me when I finally said no? The names you called me? The threats about cutting me off from family events? Rebecca, please?" "You're a selfish bitch who forgot where you came from," I read aloud. That was November 15th, right after I declined to fund your 3rd emergency of the year. "Mom's right, you're not really family anymore." November 20th. "Good riddance, we don't need your negativity anyway." That was Thanksgiving night, right before you all decided I was banned from Christmas. The extended family was staring at David with expressions ranging from shock to disgust. Jenny actually gasped. "But here's my favorite," I continued, scrolling further. "Maybe when you're old and alone, you'll remember what family means." That was 3 days ago, David. 3 days. Right around the time you figured out who I really was. I set the phone down and looked around the room. "So let me ask you all something. If I was just Rebecca Martinez, office worker, struggling to pay her bills, would I be here right now? Would any of you have called? Or would I still be banned from Christmas for daring to say no?" The silence stretched on. Finally, Aunt Maria spoke up. "Rebecca, we had no idea about any of this financial situation." "Of course you didn't," I replied, "because you never asked. None of you ever asked why I was always the one paying for things, why I was always available to solve everyone's money problems, why I never seemed to need help myself." I turned to Uncle Robert, the family patriarch who'd always commanded respect. "Uncle Robert, you've known me since I was 5 years old. In all that time, have you ever seen me ask this family for money? Ever?" He shook his head slowly. "No, mija, you never asked for anything." "That's right, Because I was raised to believe that asking for help was weakness, but giving help was love. So I gave and gave and gave until there was almost nothing left of me. I pulled out my laptop and opened my TED Talk video. This is what I've been dealing with for years, and instead of talking to me about it, instead of asking if I was okay, you banned me from Christmas. The video started playing. My voice, professional and composed, began explaining the psychology of family financial abuse. I watched my relatives' faces as they heard me describe the exact dynamics that had been playing out in our family for years. The family member becomes a resource rather than a person, my recorded voice explained. Their worth is measured by their willingness to give, not by who they are as an individual. When they finally set boundaries, they're punished through emotional withdrawal, guilt trips, and social isolation. Mom started crying somewhere around minute 3. David was staring at his hands, his face red with what I hoped was shame. 500,000 people have watched this, I said, pausing the video. 500,000 people have heard me describe what it's like to be financially abused by your own family. And you know what the comments say? Thank you for putting words to my experience. I thought I was the only one. Your courage helped me set boundaries too. I closed the laptop and looked directly at Mom. So when you tell me I'm selfish, when you say I don't understand family loyalty, you're not just hurting me, you're denying the reality of what you put me through. You're gaslighting me. We didn't mean to, Mom started. Intent doesn't erase impact, I said firmly. I don't care what you meant. I care about what you did. The room felt charged, like the air before a thunderstorm. Uncle Robert finally broke the tension. What do you need from us, Rebecca? The question caught me off guard. In all my planning, I'd focused on the confrontation, the evidence, the moment of truth. I hadn't actually thought through what came next. I need acknowledgement, I said finally. I need you to admit what happened here. I need David to stop playing victim and take responsibility for 5 years of financial manipulation. I need Mom to stop calling love what was actually exploitation. I stood up, suddenly feeling exhausted, and I need to know that this family can love me for who I am, not what I can give you. David finally looked up from his hands. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I'm really, really sorry. I didn't realize. You didn't realize because you didn't want to realize, I replied. It was easier to see me as your safety net than as your sister with her own struggles and dreams. You're right, he said, his voice breaking slightly. I was selfish. I was using you. I called you names and tried to make you feel guilty for having boundaries. I fucked up, Rebecca. I fucked up really bad. It was the first genuine apology I'd heard from him in years. Mom wiped her eyes and took a shaky breath. I thought I was protecting family unity, she said. I thought if I could just keep everyone together, keep everyone helping each other. I didn't see that I was asking you to sacrifice yourself for everyone else's comfort. You weren't just asking, I corrected gently. You were demanding. And when I finally said no, you punished me. She nodded, tears flowing freely now. I punished you for being strong enough to set boundaries that I was too scared to set myself. The admission hit me like a physical blow. Mom, who'd always seemed so confident, so sure of her family management style, was acknowledging that she'd been wrong. Not just mistaken, wrong. Uncle Robert stood up and walked over to me. Mija, he said, using the childhood nickname I hadn't heard in years. I owe you an apology, too. I should have paid attention. I should have seen what was happening. We all should have, Aunt Maria added. We let you carry burdens that weren't yours to carry. The floodgates opened then. Cousin Jenny admitted she'd always wondered why I seemed stressed at family gatherings. Carlos confessed he'd assumed I was just naturally generous, never considering the toll it was taking. One by one, they acknowledged what they'd witnessed and chosen to ignore. But it was David's next words that really broke something open in me. I want to pay you back, he said. All of it. I don't know how yet, but I want to make this right. It's not about the money anymore, I replied, and I meant it. It's about the relationship. It's about whether we can build something healthy here, or if we're going to keep repeating the same toxic patterns. Then what do we do? Mom asked. How do we fix this? I looked around the room at these people who'd shaped my entire life, who'd loved me imperfectly and hurt me deeply, who were finally seeing me as I really was. We start over, I said. We start with honesty, with boundaries, with respect. We learn to love each other without exploitation. I pulled out a piece of paper I'd prepared. My new family policy. These are my boundaries going forward, I announced. I will not be lending money to family members anymore, period. I will not be guilt-tripped for my financial decisions. I will not be treated as a resource instead of a person. And I will not tolerate being punished for setting healthy limits. I set the paper on the table. If you can accept these terms, then we can rebuild our relationship. If you can't, then this conversation ends here. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Uncle Robert picked up the paper and read it carefully. These seem like reasonable requests from a daughter who's been taken advantage of for too long, he said firmly. I support this completely. One by one, the rest of the family voiced their agreement. David promised to get help for his financial irresponsibility. Mom committed to learning about healthy family dynamics. Everyone acknowledged that change would take time and effort. As we sat down to Christmas dinner, 3 hours late but somehow more meaningful than any holiday meal we'd ever shared, I realized something profound had happened. I hadn't just won an argument or proven a point. I'd reclaimed my place in this family as an equal, as someone worthy of respect and consideration. The conversation over dinner was different too. Instead of the usual surface-level chatter, people asked me genuine questions about my work, my goals, my life beyond what I could provide for them. Jenny wanted to know about starting her own business. Carlos asked about my TED Talk experience. Even Mom seemed curious about the woman I'd become while she wasn't paying attention. I'm proud of you, she said as I was getting ready to leave. Not just for your success, but for standing up for yourself. I raised you to be strong, but I forgot that sometimes that strength needs to be used against the people who love you. You raised me to be kind, I corrected, but you didn't teach me that kindness without boundaries becomes exploitation. She hugged me then, really hugged me, for the first time in years. It felt like forgiveness and promise and new beginning all wrapped up in one embrace. As I drove home in my Tesla, Christmas lights twinkling in the darkness, I reflected on how much had changed in just a few hours. The family that had banned me from Christmas had spent the evenings celebrating not just my return, but my courage to demand better. My phone buzzed with a text from David. Thank you for not giving up on us. I smiled and typed back, "Thank you for finally seeing me." Sometimes you have to let people lose you to realize your worth. Sometimes you have to be willing to walk away to teach others how to treat you. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, they learn the lesson before it's too late. This Christmas, I didn't just get my family back. I got myself back too, and that was the best gift of all.